Right. Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us this evening. This is the Stronger Marriage webinar produced by the Utah Marriage Commission and hosted by Utah State University. My name is Ryan Gordon. I am the UMC program coordinator, and I will be your host for this event. And I'm very happy to be joined today by our presenter, Kaitlyn Zito. Thank you so much for being here, Kaitlyn.
Thank you. I'm super excited to have this opportunity.
We're really grateful you're here, so thank you. Just a couple of quick reminders to our attendees before we get started. First, if you could please make sure to stay on until the end of the session just to take a short feedback survey and also receive your continuing education credits if you are needing those tonight. We will also have a Q&A at the end of the presentation. So if you have questions at any point, you can submit those through the Q&A button. The chat's not open for participants this evening, so make sure that you use that Q&A function when you have questions for Kaitlyn. It's a little speech bubble with a question mark in it. And now, why don't I share with you just a little bit about our presenter for this webinar? Kaitlyn Zito is an associate marriage and family therapist and an undergraduate instructor at Texas Tech University, where she is currently a PhD student in couple, marriage, and family therapy. She earned her bachelor's degree in family studies from Brigham Young University and her master's in marriage and family therapy from Utah State University. Kaitlyn is passionate about making complex ideas practical and tangible for the people she works with. While she is active in research and teaching, her primary goal is to help couples, families, and individuals navigate difficult life circumstances that bring relationship distress and emotional disconnection, which makes sense why she's presenting on this topic for us tonight. Her work is informed by training in Gottman. She has training in levels 1 and 2, and accelerated resolution therapy, ART, as well as the BPSS model and restoration therapy frameworks, which she is going to be teaching us more about in her presentation tonight. And she is trained in all of these to help people move toward greater safety and resilience. She focuses on creating a warm, collaborative space where people feel seen and supported as they work through their most challenging seasons. And when she isn't teaching or in the clinic, Kaitlyn enjoys being outside and playing the cello, which is fabulous. So tonight her presentation is entitled Healing Together, a holistic approach to navigating infertility as a couple. And I'm really looking forward to learning more from her about this topic. It's a really prevalent one today and something that I know a lot of couples really struggle with. So Kaitlyn, thank you again for being here, and let's dive right in. Let's turn the time over to you.
Awesome. Thank you so much, Ryan. Great to be here tonight with everybody. Excited to talk about this really important topic about infertility and how it impacts couples and how we can really take away some tangible things. You bring things home, whether it be to your clients, whether it be to yourself, your relationship. I think it should be really great. So, thanks for that introduction, Ryan. I'll just reiterate, I love that I'm a Coug, an Aggie, and a Red Raider, currently there at Tech, and I see clients over Zoom, my Utah clients still, and it's great. I absolutely love being a therapist. I love being a daughter, sister, favorite aunt, and grandma hobbyist when I'm not researching and teaching and therapizing, I guess is the new verb. I love my grandma hobbies, embroidering and diamond art, all that good stuff. But why this webinar? Why are we talking about infertility? Why are we talking about couples specifically? Well, I'll give a little background. So I have worked with some couples who experience this, or at least this is part of their story and their experience, and I can see how difficult it is. I have loved ones, friends, family members, seeing the pain that this can bring it's intense and it's hard. It's hard to be part of someone's life that is going through this. I also attended a medical family therapy class at Utah State during my master's program and learned a lot about the integration of therapy into the medical setting. And I actually have an opportunity at Texas Tech right now where I'm kind of integrated into a complex care unit where I have met a few people who have also experienced infertility. And I've done lots of research with some colleagues on this specific treatment of couples, and infertility. And I've noticed there's a pretty big gap in the research. A lot of studies mostly focus on women. Sometimes there's men alone, but there's not a lot of dyadic data or data that is the couple unit together. So I think it's really important that we look at this as a system, because it is a system. So before we kind of get into what is infertility and how it impacts couples, I want you just to imagine this. So, woman, she's crying alone in the bathroom after that pregnancy test. 21st pregnancy test. They've been trying a long time to get pregnant. She knows her partner is always outside the bathroom, waiting there, and he is sad, right? He's sad. He doesn't know how to help, what to do. Yet again, this time again where they're struggling here. So he keeps in his mind there's at least a week of emotional withdrawal from her, and he just has to keep going. He has to keep going to work. He has to pretend everything's fine, everything's normal. He's really frustrated. He's feeling unloved because she withdraws. And on the other hand, she knows he's outside the door, and she knows he's trying to support, but he never says the right thing. She's feeling broken. He doesn't see how physically, emotionally, socially, and spiritually taxing this is for her. And the only way she knows how to cope with this pain is withdrawing from everyone. And she knows this marriage is on the rocks. So, I want you to be thinking in your minds, how can this couple in pain move toward connection rather than disconnection? Because it's really easy to move toward disconnection in something as painful as infertility. Okay, so as we understand infertility, it's the inability to conceive after 12 months of regular unprotected intercourse. And that time frame is 6 months for those over the age of 35. So, this affects a lot of couples. 1 in 7 couples in Western countries, 49% who experience infertility are more likely to experience anxiety, and 33% more likely to experience depression. And I want to put a little caveat in here. These are only coming from 3 studies. And something important just to remember stats-wise, I think this number is probably a lot higher. This is the people that these studies have found that are willing to participate in research. And we know the infertility crisis is increasing. And so I imagine these numbers are quite a bit higher. Okay, so this is not just a women's issue. This is a couple's diagnosis. So there can be female factor infertility. And oftentimes, women are the ones in the waiting room, but their partners are also living this. Sometimes it is male factor infertility, where there's low sperm count, motility, or morphology. This can affect around 50% of cases, which is a lot more than maybe we commonly think. Secondary infertility is also very real. This is the inability to conceive after a prior successful pregnancy, which can be hard, right? Couples are like, we've had children before, what's going on, what's changed? And it can be really difficult. I also wanted to mention miscarriage and pregnancy loss as really interconnected concepts here, because they're not quite the same, obviously, as infertility, but they can really feel interconnected and difficult. And so this presentation only, I'm focusing more on the infertility aspect, but I wanted to mention how difficult this is and how related it is. And then there can be some unexplained infertility. There's no clear cause identified, and this is very difficult, especially when there's not a cause. Lots of time, lots of tears, lots of money spent trying to figure out why. Why can't we have kids? So it can be very difficult. Okay, let's look at the biopsychosocial spiritual framework. So we know when we think of infertility, we might think of, oh, you can't get pregnant. We think a lot about the biological realm. So this could happen for many different reasons, But we know sometimes when people undergo fertility treatment, like hormonal treatments, there can be side effects, there can be mood effects, there can be physical effects as well. It can be really painful. Sex can become really task oriented, which has been commonly reported as something really difficult that couples experiencing infertility discuss. Right? It's ovulation time. Okay, we gotta go. It's not really connecting, and it can lead to some performance anxiety. And you'll notice as I talk about these concepts, they're very much interrelated. As I'm talking about biological, it just instantly goes to the psychological, right? That anxiety of the biological aspects of sex. Are we doing this right? Are we going to get pregnant this time, finally? And the body feels foreign. The body feels like it's working against them, and it can be really difficult. The psychological aspect, there's a lot to this, right? There could be some shame, thinking I'm broken. There is grief. There's a lot of grief with infertility, and we'll talk about that more as we go on. Anxiety, depression, there's this loss of identity and control. A lot of people don't know they're infertile until they're trying to have children. And so you grow up with this maybe idea that I'm going to be a parent. I'm so excited. I have a list of my children's names on my phone that I've had since I was in second grade, right? And when the time comes to try to have children, it's hard, and this is really shattering for identities. And this can also lead to some coping strategies that are negative and painful, either for themselves or for others. I've known of people to get really extreme anxiety or even OCD-like symptoms where they're very, very, very cautious, too cautious perhaps, about what they're consuming or using a microwave, really, and everyone has their different beliefs in that, but I've noticed a lot of people, like, I used to not be this anxious, but I'm so worried that I'm doing something wrong here, that I can control this, so I'm going to do all these things, which ultimately brings some more anxiety and loss. The social aspect is also really difficult. There's isolation from community. People report having difficulty maybe going to events where there's children, whether that be church or even just your friends, right? Your friends that are having children or family members that have children. There could be some cultural or family pressure. Hey, when are you having kids? You guys have been married for a while now. You're together for a while now. It's time, right? But they don't know. They don't know the struggle that has been occurring. Financial burden as well is something important to discuss. And how devastating is that to spend so much money and time and effort to have things just continually not work out and wonder and have that stress. Do we keep spending money here? Do we just stop? Do we stop trying here? And the secrecy of infertility, a lot of people don't go around telling people, I'm infertile, or his sperm count's low, right? That's not something we talk about a lot as a community. So that can just intensify that pain. There's also this spiritual aspect. People, and when I refer to spirituality, I refer to this idea that you're greater, something out there is greater than you, and you can rely on that to make meaning in your life. So that might be nature, the universe, a god, religion. So there could be some spiritual consequences here. So some people believe when they're struggling with infertility, are they being punished? Did that one sin when they were a teenager ruin their life? And this is why this is happening. Or sometimes it can bring you closer to each other or God or to nature. And there can be a lot of questions of meaning, purpose, identity, like I mentioned. And these beliefs can hinder or help people heal. So, I want you to either reflect on which domain feels most activated for you right now, or your clients, or your loved ones. And likely, it's probably all of these in some way. Sometimes I kind of think about these as a level, like the biological might be really high if there's some physical pain happening in treatments. and then the psychological might be down sometimes, and it just fluctuates a lot. They're very much interconnected. So let's use maybe IUI, so intrauterine insemination, as an example here. So women may take medications to stimulate the ovaries to grow eggs, which can be pretty painful for some women. Hormones can be affected, including your mood, overall well-being, your body. There's lots of blood work involved, monitoring ovulation, understanding when the right time is for insemination. A catheter is placed into the uterus to deliver concentrated sperm, which can be really, really painful. So we look at that biological aspect here of trying to conceive. And we wonder, okay, how is this taking a toll on the partners? We see the clear biological impacts, but what else is happening here? Are they not maybe going out socially because of the pain? Or they're concerned if they do too much, they'll lose the embryo? Are they isolating because they're so consumed in treatment, the financial costs, the emotional pain? Are they doubting, or are they kind of leaning into spiritual resources at this time? And how's their anxiety and their stress in the waiting period to see if conception has actually happened? So there's a lot, as you can see, they're very much integrated. One thing I want to really emphasize is there is this inescapable grief that accompanies, it's not a fun guest, I guess, that accompanies infertility. So it shows up everywhere, right? It's going to be in children's playground. Every time you pass a playground, you might think, oh, I wish I had a kid that I could take there, or park. Or friends' pregnancy announcements. Like, there's this joy for friends or for family members, but also so much pain that you're not the one announcing a pregnancy. TV shows, movies, social media, you see it everywhere. Baby showers, gender reveals, milestones and anniversaries. Oh, we would have been celebrating our baby's first birthday, or maybe they'd be in kindergarten now if we got pregnant at the time that we planned. And so it just doesn't go away. Life continues as if nothing's really wrong. There's not bereavement, there's not rituals to help. There's not something or someone lost, which also makes it difficult with the ritual. Like, there's not a name, there's not a baby, which leads to this ambiguous loss, which is, all loss is painful. Ambiguous loss is really difficult because people can't really see it. You're grieving something that never was, or that feels so impossible, and it's a daily reminder. And it's constantly resurfacing. Like I mentioned earlier, there's not really many socially accepted ways to grieve infertility. So this just makes this dynamic even harder on the individuals in the relationship, but also just the couple. It's a lot to hold. It's a lot to hold. So, getting into some restoration therapy. This is a model that I use, and I'll give a little background. So it's developed by Terry Hargrave and colleagues. It's an integrated model of kind of attachment theory, so basically how we grew up and the experiences we had as children shape us and our behaviors, and acceptance and commitment therapy, which is cognitive behavioral therapy plus mindfulness. And so your thoughts really impact how you view the world and see the world and behave. And I would also add in solution-focused brief therapy, which is very action-oriented and forward-focusing and positive-focusing. So I love this because it doesn't fully stay stuck in the past. It doesn't stay very stuck in the present or the future. So it uses all three, which I really, really love, because the past informs our present and the future. So we can take steps now to move toward healing, and we just have to practice over and over again. So the roots, the basis of restoration therapy describes that love and trust are necessities for humans to feeling wanted and secure in the world. So people experience problems or start developing behaviors that are negatively impacting themselves or others when one of these constructs of love or trust are violated. And by violations, I mean they could be even small things that happen to us as kids, like, oh, my dad forgot to show up to this mm, swim meet or something that I had. And your brain changes a little, like, oh, maybe he doesn't love me, right? Little kid brains might start thinking that. And when you start seeing those patterns over and over again, there become bigger wounds. And obviously, there are much bigger wounds that people experience. So there are several different types of love that infertility can strike, but we'll even just talk about these types of love first. So there's this companionate, there's care, there's deep friendship, there's romantic love, passion, and emotional focus, and then there's altruistic. So this is maybe past the honeymoon phase where romance is extremely strong, but there's this sacrificing for your loved one. And so infertility can strike at love when there's so much stress that you can't really focus on the friendship. The friendship is failing. The passion and the emotion and the romance of sexual intimacy might also not be there. And yeah, it can be really, really tough. It can also, looking at trust, affect that as well. So people need predictability, justice, balance. They need openness to know that the world is safe and secure and they can keep going. Infertility obviously inherently attacks trust, right? I can't trust my body. Do I trust medical professionals? Sometimes people cannot trust medical professionals. There's been a lot of sad stories of bad things happening to people going through infertility treatment. Sometimes we don't trust the medical professionals because what they're saying isn't working, right? So there's that breach of trust. Like, I should be able to trust what this doctor's saying. Or should I be able to trust my body to do this? So it can be extremely difficult. And also that justice piece too that I'm thinking of. Like, if we're seeing other people, other couples that are easily able to get pregnant and have babies and just keep going, that feels like a breach, a violation of justice almost. Like, how is that fair, right? So what we see, excuse me, gonna take a drink. What we see versus what's kind of underneath. So there's the visible behaviors. Blame and criticism might happen, withdrawal and silence, controlling behavior, obsessing over treatment. Something really, really important here is that reactive behaviors like this usually aren't what they look like. They look like blame, they look like maybe being a jerk, but really there is deep fear or deep shame happening. They're protective responses to pain. So I love restoration therapy because it kind of gets beneath the surface level behaviors. So we, in restoration therapy, want to really look at these primary emotions. Think about an iceberg. The top of the iceberg, there's just a little bit here. That's kind of the visible behaviors, but under the surface, there's so much more there. So there could be fear, waiting, wondering, feeling so helpless. There's only so much we can do. Feeling I'm broken, not enough. There's grief over the imagined future and even the past. And there's this powerlessness. So in restoration therapy, we identify pain cycles and we integrate biopsychosocial spiritual within this. It all connects. So an example of this could be there's a trigger. There's a negative pregnancy test, a comment made, even a comment that was super nonchalant, had no intention of hurting someone. Like, oh yeah, my kid went to recess the other day and this, But that can be a little bit of a trigger, or a lot of bit of a trigger for someone. Or an intimacy request. Okay, that can lead to a core belief that's maybe more negative or not true. I'm broken, I'm unimportant, which can lead to a reactive behavior. So that could be withdrawing, blaming, controlling, pursuing, which leads to the partner feeling pain. They're feeling now abandoned or attacked, and their cycle starts activating, and it just keeps going over and over and over. And oftentimes, this sounds like a nice little 4-step easy process, but this is happening instantaneously, right? We don't sit and think like, oh, this trigger made me feel this way, and now I'm going to blame my partner for everything they've done. And now they're going to be sad. Usually it's just so fast. We notice the behavior first. So sometimes we start there. What are my behaviors? How do I normally respond to these things? And how does he or she respond to those things? And then we kind of work backwards sometimes, kind of go deeper into the iceberg. All right, we're going to look at a pain cycle in kind of real life with a couple that experiences infertility. And I want to say here, this is just a conceptualization. This is not my real clients. These aren't all the real details for my clients. Facts and stories are changed to demonstrate how this would work. So, there's a core wound for Jane. One of her core wounds that we've identified is she's broken. She feels broken. She says, if my body doesn't work, I'm unlovable. And they're experiencing female factor infertility. So, a root here. Her mom, growing up, as we discovered in therapy, equated a lot of worth with physical control. And her mom was pretty maybe distant. So Jane noticed over time that if she exercised a ton, or she lost a lot of weight, or she was very, very particular with the food she ate, her mom gave her a lot more praise because she was able to control. And she connected with her mom in this way. And so she grew up, maybe this violation of love, like I'm not unconditionally loved. My love is tied to how I look, or what my body does or does not do. So this kind of eating disorder wound resurfaces, and you might not think, oh, infertility is tied to eating disorder. But in therapy, we start kind of tying that back. Like this feeling of brokenness feels really similar to when you were growing up. And not to blame or to hate parents, but to really understand and to learn is really important here. So her triggers are typically negative pregnancy tests, some physical pain from treatments, doctor visits anytime she hears a phone call. She's like, is it the doctor? Or sitting in the waiting room, seeing other people, questions from family members, or seeing pregnant friends or family members. And her reaction typically is she's withdrawing, she becomes really emotionally unavailable, and she obsesses over treatment. She spends hours a day researching and looking up all the fads that influencers maybe are discussing. Try this oil, you'll get pregnant. Okay, then Alex. We'll look at Alex. So his core wound is feeling unimportant. I'm abandoned if I'm not chosen. And his root, through therapy, we would kind of discover, is these feelings are from his father's inconsistency during a high conflict divorce between his mom and his father. And seeing that, my dad left. Maybe I'm not worth it. He started believing this truth about himself, that I'm not worth it. I'm not worth staying for. If people don't choose me, I'm abandoned. So when Jane starts withdrawing, he feels really scared and abandoned. He's like, oh no, it's happening again. Those inner wounds are being torn apart a little bit. So when ovulation happens, this is another trigger for him. Like, oh gosh, here we go again. Like, maybe this time, right? Maybe this time. So timed intercourse can feel like a chore. It's not connecting. There's some helplessness. A big trigger of his as well is going to work and hearing about his coworkers' kids because he desperately wants to have children. So what he does, his reaction is pushing harder and harder for connection, accusing Jane of being really unavailable, and he can be pretty harsh with that. So, in restoration therapy, with this integration as well with biopsychosocial spiritual model, we want to chase the pain. And chasing the pain is a term coined by the developers of restoration therapy. We want to go beneath the surface. Wherever we see pain, we want to go there. Not because we don't like our clients or we want them to be sad. I don't want them to ever be sad, but chasing the pain is so important. Because when we understand the pain, we can treat it. We don't want to treat cancer with ibuprofen, and we don't want to get surgery on our leg when we have a broken arm that needs surgery. We do need to comprehend, at least in my opinion, and other therapists might totally think differently, and that's valid. In my opinion, I think we need to comprehend what happened in the past and why the pain is there and where it's located so we can treat it and we can help it and we can get better. So, there's usually wounds from childhood, and there can be issues within the couple that have nothing to do with childhood, perhaps. But oftentimes, the couple problems have some sort of tie back to the past, and these are exacerbated by the wounds of the past. So that's where this therapist would explore these interventions. So we might say something like, okay, it doesn't sound like you're necessarily fighting about sex all the time. It sounds more like maybe Jane's feeling worthless because her body's just not doing what she wants it to do. So we start understanding the pain, we can stop instantly reacting from it. Which also leads us to the intervention called right script, wrong person. So when Jane gets super withdrawn, we realize this pain might not be Alex. It might be some of the pain she experienced when she was a kid. It might be some of the pain geared towards her mom, not necessarily toward Alex. Yeah, I do want to say there could be some couple dynamics there, but we want to help people realize, like, I don't think you really hate Alex. I don't think, this is what's going on. It sounds like there's something there from the past, some past violations of love or trust. And so we realize when Jane withdraws, Alex is reliving his father's abandonments. We're like, Alex, I don't think it's Jane intentionally running away from you or abandoning you, right? And we explore a little bit more of the father's abandonment and how they connect, how these patterns connect. And just recognizing the script belongs to the past is really helpful. Now we want to shift to peace, because we don't want to stay stuck in the past, stuck in the pain forever. What do we do? How do I manage this pain? Do I need surgery? Do I not? So that's where a restoration therapist, again, combining the biological, psychological, social, spiritual assessments and discussions to these certain interventions. So one is called reparenting, and I love reparenting. It is so special to witness some of my clients see this. And honestly, being a therapist in general is very sacred. But sometimes these moments are one of my very favorites. So this is where they kind of imagine, as we chase the pain, we say, okay, we'll use Alex, for example. Like, I am not chosen, I'm abandoned. So we say, okay, Alex, when's the first time you remember, or one of your earliest memories of feeling abandoned? And let's talk about it. So they talk through it, and we actually do an imagery exercise kind of them imagining themselves in that space, imagining that first time they were hurt or they felt abandoned. And you, as you are now, can kind of go in your own mind. It sounds a little funny, but it works and it's helpful. You can go to your old self and say the things you needed as a child or as a teen. And you can comfort them, you can give them a hug, you can tell them whatever they need. You can help them, you can save them. And so this kind of starts healing, honestly, this inner child that gets activated with these pain cycles. And the more they can lean into the truth, like, I am loved, no matter what. People's actions don't define me. They can start to learn and lean into that truth and they become less reactive in their daily life with the current pain they experience. So I love that. It's such a beautiful thing to practice and to see, and it's very powerful. There's also finding truth about self, because there's a lot of negative things that we maybe believe about ourselves, such as I'm broken or I'm not enough. We want to do kind of opposite thoughts. This is where the acceptance commitment therapy kind of comes in cognitive behavioral therapy. So instead of I'm broken, what's the truth? The truth isn't you're broken. The truth is you're whole and you're worthy regardless of your ability to conceive. The truth also is this is extremely painful. This isn't denying pain, but this is also helping you shift to what's actually true. And a lot of times clients might have a hard time if they have some pretty negative self-talk. We can say, okay, you know what do you wish you believed about yourself? What do you think is maybe 10% true and you wish you believed it 100%? And so we start building a list of truths they either believe about themselves or want to believe about themselves. And we can help couples kind of build confidence within themselves, which ultimately helps build confidence in the relationship. So, the 4 steps in general, let's talk about these. This is really one of the most tangible things you could take away from this webinar. One is walking through these kind of helps people directly move from pain to peace and connectedness. So, 1, you're going to name what I'm feeling. You're going to name the fear or the emotion and not just the behavior. In frustrated, usually there's something under frustrated, I'll say. So, we might feel hurt or fearful or shameful. So we say out loud, it's important to say out loud and practice this because your brain doesn't think about other things as much when you're speaking out loud. I'm feeling shameful. What do I normally do when I feel shameful? So this is getting into the pain. So normally I withdraw. I withdraw from my partner, or I give them the silent treatment, or I push her for more connection. So 3, you're going to say, what's the truth? I'm enough. I am enough. I'm safe in this relationship. We have chosen each other, right? And 4 is choosing a different behavior. So instead of reacting, you're going to choose something different, and you're going to practice that. So I'm going to connect. I'm going to ask for what I need. So I love this. This is so awesome. I think a lot of people, they might learn in different ways, so you can really tailor this to whatever way you think your clients or yourself might learn best. So sometimes I always like to show it on paper or a whiteboard or my iPad in sessions, but sometimes I'll also have couples stand up and across the room from each other. And so every time each of them states one of these steps, they take a step toward each other. And at the end, they're very close, and oftentimes they hug, and they're like, wow, this is a physical representation of us actually being able to get closer together during this. And you can practice this yourselves, even without the help of a therapist, with honestly any issue you're experiencing, and I guarantee it's going to be super helpful. And sometimes you do need the third party of a therapist to help you through it, but this is something you can start practicing today. So let's look at how Jane and Alex would work through this. So we'll pretend this finger is Jane and this is Alex. So a therapist, they're standing across the room from each other, imagine. So 1, Jane's going to state what she's feeling. She's going to say, I'm feeling ashamed and worthless. She takes a step. Alex, what are you feeling? I'm feeling scared and alone. He takes a step. Jane, normally when I'm ashamed and worthless feeling, I withdraw and I shut down, and that leads him to really push me. Take a step forward. For Alex, normally when I'm feeling scared and alone, I push really hard, I criticize Jane, and that just pushes her further away. Take a step. 3, the truth is, for Jane, I am enough beyond my ability to conceive. Take a step forward. The truth for Alex, my worth is not based on Jane's response. And many more truths, right? 4, so we do our new behavior. So Jane, she says, I'm going to choose connection, and I'm going to say how I feel. I'm feeling overwhelmed. I need reassurance, not solutions. So she takes a step forward. Alex, he says, I'm going to try to express some of my feelings. I'm going to say, I miss being close to you. Can we connect without pressure? They also decide as a couple, he's going to start taking the fertility phone calls, do everything he can possibly do to relieve some of that pressure from Jane and give her space when she needs that. And takes a step forward. So they're a lot closer than when they first started. I love the 4 steps. They are so important because we have these neural pathways in our brains that when we say over and over again, or we experience over and over again the feelings of ashamed or worthless or scared and alone, we build these trenches in our brain. It takes a long time to get out of those. It takes a lot of hard work, but it also takes some hard work to build new pathways. And so practicing this thousands of times will help you start to build new pathways of truth. And you start believing the truth. And it starts becoming easier and easier. Just as like a reactive, like someone cuts me off on the road, my reaction is so annoyed. But I've also practiced that over and over again. I need to practice taking a deep breath when someone cuts me off, right? And that helps me build new pathways in my brain and new behaviors. So this is something super important to keep in mind and practice. Okay, supporting someone through infertility grief. This is really tender and difficult to talk about. So with various conversations I've had with clients and friends and in my classes, something universally important and tangible, I guess, to understand and take away from this webinar as well is grief and distress tolerance. It is not easy. I think our society needs practice with tolerating distress and grief. But really, the truth is it's so uncomfortable to see people in pain. But that's okay, right? Infertility isn't very joyful, and it's really hard for us to support people when we know there's literally nothing we can do to fix the problem of fertility for them. We can't wave a magic fairy wand over our friends and our family members to make them fertile, as much as we would love to do. So oftentimes, loved ones or friends, support people can make some assumptions as to what is or is not helpful for people in grief. So, okay, I think they just want to be left alone. If I was going through this, I wouldn't want anyone to talk to me. So I'm just not going to bring this up. I don't want people to be sad, right? I'm not going to share this. Or I won't share the news of our pregnancy with them because I know they've been trying for so long. And there's obviously caveats with all of these. Everyone is super different and can even fluctuate in their grief daily, hourly, by the minute. So oftentimes we have really good intentions to support people when our friends are in pain or our family members are in pain. But sometimes avoiding conversations or saying sometimes insensitive comments can be pretty hurtful because the reality is either way, this couple is already in pain. Infertility is so painful, but isolation while navigating infertility and grief is even more painful. But this is a really fine balance, and in some ways, as support people, we can't really win. Like, whatever we say, it's not going to fix it. And it might hurt. So, instead of saying things like, oh, I know how you feel, it took me blank amount of time to get pregnant, or it took us that long, or just relax, it'll happen. It'll happen if you just calm your body and your nervous system down. Have you guys tried this? Have you tried that? Right? Unsolicited advice is never very fun. If there's solicited advice, that could be really helpful though. So at least you can try again. You can try again. There's next month. So this kind of just misses the grief. And everything happens for a reason. This is one we can see a lot in like spiritual contexts. And this can be a truth that you believe and you hold, but that also can be pretty dismissive, right? Like, that's maybe not what a lot of people want to hear or need to hear in that moment of loss and pain. So instead of these, we can say, we don't really have to fix their grief. And that's hard. But we can try saying, hey, how can I be your friend right now? One of my friends actually told me this the other day, who had personally experienced infertility and who has a loved one experiencing this as well. And she said, hey, how can I be your friend today? And I love that. I love that because that doesn't assume what they need or want, but that gives them flexibility in being able to tell you, yeah, this is helpful, or I don't want to talk, or I want distraction right now. I don't want to think about this, or I need to vent. I thought that was really, really powerful. So we can say, I don't even know what to say. I'm so sorry. Tell me more if you want. You know, sometimes saying less is very much more because it gives them a space and we're not assuming. And we can say, if you want to share, I want to hear you and I want to see you. And I'm here, whatever that looks like. Sometimes when people are grieving or going through difficult times, saying, let me know if you need anything, some people may not let you know. They probably don't. But they probably would like some help. So we can offer some concrete help. So we can say, can I bring you dinner? Watch your other kids if they have kids. Can I watch your dog? Do you want me to listen? Like, give them some options. And if they say no, none of that, then that's great. Or if they say, yeah, actually, we don't have any food, that'd be great. So that can be really, really helpful. So this journey is painful. This couple's diagnosis of infertility can either pull couples apart, and maybe it does inherently a little bit because of how painful it is, but it also can become an opportunity to grow in deeper love, vulnerability, and connection. So healing together is very, very, very much possible. And that is all that I have today. Here's some references, and I'm excited to take on any questions today.
Thank you so much, Kaitlyn. That was a fantastic presentation. I learned a whole lot. And I'm also excited to see what questions people have. So as they are working on getting those in, I loved what you were talking about with just grief tolerance as a society. And I'm sure this is probably something that you encounter in therapy often, is kind of people's aversion, our aversion to grief and discomfort, whether that's other people's or our own. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was curious what you like, how, if you have any suggestions for building, helping us build up that tolerance to grief, because it's part of
Mm,
life, right? But
yeah,
how do we build up that tolerance? I'd love to hear
that's
your
a
thoughts.
great question. Yeah, a couple things come to mind. I think one is getting more practice and exposure because sometimes we avoid it or we don't ask. We know someone has either lost a parent or something or someone in their life and we're too nervous to ask. So I think challenging yourself in ways of saying, "Hey, this happened to you and I'm so sorry," you know, being able to just notice and be mindful about yourself and how grief shows up and maybe understanding why are we nervous? Does it remind us of our own pain that is maybe not healed quite yet, scarred over? Um, but exposing ourselves, I think, is really helpful.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a tough question.
Yeah, definitely
Um,
want to think about that more, though. There's a lot to it.
yeah, no, thank you. I think that's always been just something that I've struggled with is knowing how to just sit with someone in their grief and not be able to fix it. Okay,
Yeah.
we've got a question from one of our participants. It says, "Oh, will these slides and the recording be made available for attendees after the webinar?" Great question. Thank you. The slides, that's up to Kaitlyn. Kaitlyn, if you would like, I'm happy to share these slides with those that are attending this evening, so I can do that. And then, yes, the recording will be made available after the webinar. You can find it up on our website in the next day or two. You can access that there. So thank you. Great question.
Yeah. Happy to help in any way.
Perfect. Let's see. Give people another few minutes, and people might this in particular is a difficult topic, I think, because it's just really vulnerable. It's really vulnerable
Yes.
to ask or know how to
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
how to address. Yeah. Go
I would
ahead.
say too, I was thinking more about the grief. Um, I think education as well on what
Mhm.
grief is always helpful. Like learning what grief looks like, what are signs, what are the typical experiences. Sometimes we learn about them in stages, like, okay, you're in the denial stage now, now you're in this stage. But that's not really how it works. It's a way to represent grief,
Mhm.
but they're usually so combined and it's so messy and it just maybe because maybe even those who get pregnant, they are excited, but that grief is still there and it's still super valid, I think.
Yeah, that's a really great point. There's not like an end, particularly with like these ambiguous kind of losses that you don't really
Exactly.
have closure for
Yeah.
is accessible to you. We have a great question. What have you seen as healthy end goals in quotation marks for couples dealing with infertility?
Yeah. That's a great question, Allison. Healthy end goals, it depends on where they start. Classic therapist answer. It depends, right? But I would say if they're able to connect with each other and the relationship feels healthy in a way that you can support each other, connect each other, understand each other's pain, understand each other's maybe peace cycles. I think that's a very healthy end goal because we can't guarantee fertility, right? We can't guarantee, oh, if you do this, you'll finally get pregnant or you'll finally be relaxed enough, right? So I think that's a really good end goal. We can connect and we can be okay and maybe readjust our view in the future and our goals as a couple.
Yeah, that's really powerful. Thank you. Um, Ingrid shared, she said, my therapist had shared with me that with each loss, there is a restart of the grief journey, which can make it feel endless. So to add to your thoughts on grief, and I think that is very uh, a great observation because it just keeps coming up. It's something you mentioned that like it's a pain point that just gets kind of poked at or irritated. These things as we go through life, we experience things that trigger us, right? Or that bring up that pain again fresh. It can be really difficult.
They do, yeah. I and it almost maybe compounds too at times. Like oh, another year, another loss. And it just adds and it's this roller coaster that's so difficult. I saw this picture. I was trying to find it to include in this presentation. Maybe some of you have seen it, but it kind of talks about the stages of grief, and there's just scribbles all over it, like connecting every single point. And I think that's a great representation. It's not linear. It's not, okay, once you do this, then you do this. And now you're in the acceptance phase, right? So I think that's super helpful to think about and remember.
It's messy. It's messy. I think
Very.
on the positive side of that too, healing is the same way. Like it's the you see the grief, that keeps coming back, and healing, I think, is the process is just as messy, and but it can be, you can find the beauty in the mess too. That's just what it means to be human, right?
Yeah, and there's power with that. I think people who experience infertility and grief in general, they have a really special way of being able to connect with others and to empathize deeply, even though they might not have the exact same experiences. That is a beautiful part of being a human for sure.
I have that. Well, and I've seen just for me, I loved your recommendations for what you can, how you can show up for people that are in grief.
Mm-hmm.
And it made me think, I recently had a friend who had a sister pass away, and it rocked her family's world. And I had the desire to, they asked if I would come and visit her. And I had the desire to bring something. I was like, I need to bring something to like give to her, try and fix it. And I settled on nothing. I just said there's nothing that I can bring that will change or fix this, but I can just bring myself and come empty-handed and let her just sit with her and her grief and let her like give her a space for her sadness and not feel like it had to be fixed. So it's yeah, it's just very difficult and messy to to sit in that space with someone, and that's okay.
100%. Yeah.
Um, we have this another question, and I think we'll end there for the evening. But the question is, what does the research show about healing together being possible? So how, how maybe how common is it for couples to get through this together rather than having it push them apart?
Yeah. Ooh, good question. I think this kind of, I can generalize this to most couples therapy or family therapy research. Some of the origins of family therapy and couples therapy, like how our field even came to be, was the schizophrenic mother. So the mom has a child. I'm getting to hopefully a good point here. Like, well, how does this have to do with anything? Anyways, so a child has schizophrenia. They blame it on the mother. The mother wasn't there. Blah blah blah. Over time, they realize, wait, it's more than just the mom. It's not maybe all her fault. There's something else happening. There's something in the environment. There's something in their whole family system. And so then they're kind of looking at, okay, maybe let's get the family in. At first, they isolated the individual to try to get them treatment and put them in psych wards and things. And that didn't really help a lot. But getting the family involved was helpful. So, I definitely think some of the research shows just generally working together, like our souls are so, I guess, programmed. I don't, there's a better word, but they're programmed for connection. We're born because of a connection. We're here because of some connection. Whether that be a positive or negative connection. We need to be connected to people. So healing together is so healing for the soul. And so that's what most of the research says, but that's also just a belief that I hold really deeply.
That's beautiful, Kaitlyn. Thank you so much. We've had a few more people pop in with questions saying just thank you for your recommendations. And then a final one said, this was excellent. Thank you. Also, I'll raise my hand as a member of a couple who's turned closer to each other through infertility. It's absolutely possible. So I
Mm.
think that's a really great note to end on there. Thank you again, Kaitlyn, for sharing this research and your experience and your advice on this tender topic. And thank you so much as well to those of us who joined for this webinar. We're so grateful for your participation and your questions and comments. Again, just as a reminder, please stick around to fill out the survey after the webinar ends. It gives us feedback so that we can make sure these are meeting your needs. And it also gives you the chance to get a certificate for continuing education credits if that's something that you are interested in. If that survey doesn't pop up automatically for you, or if you have other questions for us, feel free to send us an email at marriagecommission@usu.edu. And then our next presentation will take place on June 11th at 6:30 p.m. So we're shifting down a little bit because our presenter is currently living in Hawaii and has is in a different time zone. And this presentation will be given by licensed marriage and family therapist Tammy Hill. And she's going to be talking about navigating dating with children after divorce or loss. So, if that's something that you or someone you know is navigating and you would like to attend, you can register on our website, strongermarriage.org. And that is all we have for you tonight. Thank you so much again, Kaitlyn.
Thank you.
And thank you everyone for your time tonight. Take
Yeah,
care.
it's been wonderful. Bye.
Thanks.